This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gitu-Ewart. It's Wednesday, December 11th. This is Africa 54. The United Nations calls on governments to allow human rights activists to express their views. The president of the International Criminal Court discusses the strained relations between the Hague-based institution and the United States. And a new rehab technology company strives to help patients regain strength through gaming. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first we begin in East Africa with a deadly hotel attack in Somalia that police say left multiple terrorist gunmen dead, several civilians killed, and nearly a dozen others wounded. Serena Chondri has more on the violent siege.
Somali security forces have shot dead 5 Al-Shabaab gunmen, police said on Wednesday, bringing an end to a siege at a hotel near the presidential palace in Mogadishu. The Al-Qaeda-linked militant group launched an attack on Sale Hotel late on Tuesday, killing 3 civilians and 2 soldiers. 11 others were wounded, police said. Mogadishu resident Abdi Ali was nearby.
After we prayed evening prayers, we heard gunfire at the gate, and I ran and jumped off the wall. Some people were wounded and lying on the ground while I safely jumped, and praise be to Allah.
The hotel, a popular gathering place for officials and lawmakers, was previously targeted by the group in 2016. Al-Shabaab, which once controlled most of Somalia, frequently launches bombing and gun raids in a bid to topple the country's UN-backed government.
Serena Chondri of Reuters with that report. The 71st anniversary of the United Nations World Human Rights Day was commemorated on Tuesday, and the UN Secretary General marked the occasion by saying that governments worldwide must allow the voices of human rights advocates, including young people, to be heard. VOA's Arashar Basadi has more.
On the 71st anniversary of World Human Rights Day, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres sounded an alarm.
Young people are rightly demanding that governments listen to them and respect them. Their voices must be heard.
This against a backdrop of long-lasting protests the world over. In Chile Tuesday, authorities fired water cannons and tear gas at protesters.
I want to share with you an agenda to fight abuses and ensure dignified and fair treatment to all Chileans, to strengthen a culture of respect for the human rights of everyone, every time and place, enhance the support and aid that we give to the victims of human rights, and always guarantee the access to truth and justice, and always avoid impunity.
While in the Philippines, protesters burned an effigy of President Rodrigo Duterte. Thousands of Filipinos have died since Duterte began a violent crackdown on the use and commerce of illegal drugs.
We cannot allow that basic social services are deprived from the people, that the human rights violations and rampant killings will go on, because that is the kind of society that we will pass on to the future generations.
Meanwhile, in Indonesia, protesters marched to the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta for freedom of speech and religion.
In commemorating International Human Rights Day, we have come here to convey that the democratic rights and human rights of the Indonesian people have not been fulfilled and have been usurped by the government.
Secretary Guterres, in his address Tuesday, criticized countries that punish defenders of human rights, while Secretary of State Mike Pompeo labeled as human rights abusers China, Iran, Syria, and Venezuela. Absent from the list, North Korea, regarded as one of the worst abusers of human rights. Guterres says the world's youth are the future of human rights.
Human rights violations, misogyny, and exclusion are widespread and systematic. Inequality is growing, and hate speech is poisoning public debate. The climate crisis, urbanization, and endless conflict are denying millions of people their fundamental rights and freedoms.
This year's theme is youth standing up for human rights, and Guterres applauded young frontline warriors in the fight against climate change, which he says poses a serious threat to both human rights and human life. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
In North Africa, a large crowd of protesters marched through central Algiers Wednesday, demanding that Thursday's presidential election be cancelled, chanting they would not vote in a poll they regard as a charade. Thousands of people crowded through the Algerian capital, demanding the vote be postponed until the entire ruling elite steps down and the military steps out of politics. Algeria's political stalemate between the enormous protest movement and a state increasingly dominated by the military has put a stake at the political future of Africa's largest country. All 5 of the state-approved presidential candidates are former senior officials linked to former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, whom the army forced out in April in response to the protests. The United States slapped sanctions on the leader of an Islamist rebel group and 5 others on Tuesday for perpetrating serious human rights abuses, including mass rape, torture, and killings in eastern Congo. The rebel Allied Democratic Forces, who are originally from Uganda, are accused of killing more than 100 people in a series of raids on villages over the last 6 weeks. According to the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, ADF leader Musa Baluku assisted the group through recruitment, logistics, financing, intelligence, and operations coordination. The restrictions allows the U.S. to seize any property or accounts the fighters have in the U.S. and prohibits anyone in the U.S. from doing business with them. Now, the president of the International Criminal Court, Judge Chile Eboe-Osuji, is expressing hope that relations between the Hague-based court and the U.S. will improve. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accused the ICC of attacking America's rule of law after ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda requested an investigation into allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by Allied forces in Afghanistan. Judge Osuji spoke to VOA's Peter Clotty about the situation.
What do you think is the current relationship between the International Criminal Court and Washington, and what would you expect it to be in terms of bolstering the relationship?
The relationship, as you know, everyone knows, it's not good. It leaves much to be desired. And I came to engage in that discussion to recall the strong role America has played in matters of rule of law, historically, including establishing international accountability mechanisms from Nuremberg, Nuremberg Tribunal, to the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the Special Court for Sierra Leone, and the Extraordinary Chamber in the Courts of Cambodia. It is for that reason that we find the current state of affairs, the attitudes of Washington towards the ICC quite surprising.
Is there a political will to mend fences and to get to a place where you both feel comfortable in working in a working relationship? Because I know the U.S., although a signatory, had not ratified its signature with the Rome Statute, which effectively established the ICC. They did not ratify. They've not ratified. They signed at some point and then withdrew the signature. So we need to. So I'm not sure we can even say they're signatory. But it's important to note that the American delegation were part of the people who negotiated the text of the Rome Statute. They played a part. The American Bar Association played a prominent role in urging not only for the creation of the ICC since 1978 until it was created in 1998, but lots of Americans support the court and they wish us well. And the only thing now is for the government to also pay heed to the role America has played in this sort of endeavor in the past, as is very consistent with their own
national approach to rule of law and judicial independence. So we strongly encourage them to become part of the fold. It will strengthen the institution, it will strengthen that mechanism and ensure that its dividends spread out more widely and more robustly around the world.
One of the criticisms often leveled against the ICC is that the ICC sometimes behave politically. They cited examples of Laurent Gbagbo in Ivory Coast, where he wasn't allowed to go back home because of fear that his presence there could cause political upheaval. What do you say to critics who say that sometimes the court is used politically instead of just sticking to what it does best, prosecuting those who commit human rights violations?
There are two things there. First of all, I want to say categorically that the court does not get used politically.
All right.
You see, the problem is these things, there are lots of people who come up with these narratives and you don't know where to get them from, and then they run away with it. We are a court of law, and we're not always in there mixing up, you know, with these narratives and countering them. That's not what we do. We're a court of law. Now, I cannot comment on the Laurent Gbagbo case for the simple reason that that case is pending on appeal, and I am a member of the appeals chamber that will have to decide that appeal. In fact, I am the presiding judge in that appeal, so it will not be appropriate for me to comment on that.
In Thursday's part 2 of the interview, ICC President Judge Chile Eboe-Osuji rejects criticisms that the court targets Africans. He also spells out conditions under which the court will accept cases of allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity. America's historically black colleges and universities are facing declining enrollment, as are many other U.S. universities. But North Carolina, A&T, the country's largest HBCU, is boasting of growth as it continues to welcome international students to its campus. Isha Sarai reports from Greensboro, North Carolina.
North Carolina A&T, the country's largest historically black university, has been welcoming international students for decades.
We have had as many as 50 countries represented, and this semester we actually have 36 countries. Again, there are close to 320 international students moving about our campus.
A&T, which stands for Agricultural and Technical, produces the most black engineers of any university in the country. The school's strong science and engineering programs have hosted a wide range of international students seeking master's and doctoral degrees.
I was also looking for a school that was culturally diverse because I was traveling for the first time. So I needed an environment that would promote diversity and accept people from all kinds of cultural backgrounds.
I feel more at home here. You know, staying in the midst of people, sharing same ideas as I am, and also not being like feeling inferior because of color or skin color or whatever. I feel at home here.
Enrollment by international students at U.S. universities has fallen this year, and despite A&T's reputation, the school also expects a slight decline for the next academic year.
Part of that is due to the stronger immigrations and visa interview requirements, but primarily funding and financial support for international students interested in coming to the university.
But the department remains confident that, especially given the school's overall growth in recent years, international students will continue to choose A&T for their studies. Isha Sarai, VOA News, Greensboro, North Carolina.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, the latest rehab trend, attaining strength through gaming. We'll be back.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Dogs dressed in tutus, jackets, masks, and sportswear walked the runway at the first edition of the Lagos Dog Carnival. Over 100 guests and 45 dogs of various breeds participated. Awards included Best Dressed, Best Groomed, Best in Showmanship, and Best Human and Dog Pair. The dogs also participated in various other activities, such as face painting and enjoying games in the play area during the event. Next up, a Japanese cosmetics company has unveiled what it says is the world's first spray-on skin, a moisturizing face mask made of fibers 1/100th the thickness of a human hair. After applying an absorbent lotion, users spray the fibers onto their face, and a thin translucent sheet is quickly formed, acting as a greenhouse for the real skin below to soak up the moisture and still be able to breathe. In the future, Uchiyama says it could be used to cover scars or to create an invisible medical patch. And finally, Toronto-based organization 21 Toys has created the Failure Toy, which aims to challenge the notion that failure is something to be feared and hidden, rather than something that can be practiced and developed as a skill. The toy is a game of balance and experimentation. In teams, you compete for points, which you earn when you successfully balance game pieces on an unstable base. You lose when pieces fall, but get more points for taller structures. The toy teaches how to deal with risk, competition, and expectations of others. And that's what's trending today.
In other world news, U.S. House Democrats accused President Donald Trump of 2 impeachable offenses Tuesday, introducing articles of impeachment accusing him of abusing his office for personal political gain and obstructing the congressional impeachment inquiry. A vote on the articles of impeachment in the Democratic majority U.S. House is expected to pass next week. VOA congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more of the probe details.
An historic moment. House Democrats bring formal charges against the President of the United States.
Today, in service to our duty to the Constitution and to our country, the House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors.
After almost 3 months of investigation and weeks of hearings, Democrats say the evidence shows Trump leveraged U.S. security aid to Ukraine to benefit his own personal political interests.
The evidence of the president's misconduct is overwhelming and uncontested. And how could it not be when the president's own words on July 25th, "I would like you to do us a favor, though," lays so bare his intentions, his willingness to sacrifice the national security for his own personal interests. And when the president got caught, he committed his second impeachable act, obstruction of Congress of the very ability to make sure that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
Each article of impeachment lays out a reason Democrats say Trump should be removed from office for abusing the power of his presidency for his own personal gain and preventing Congress from investigating his actions. Trump tweeted Democrats were ignoring the facts. His Republican allies on Capitol Hill said impeachment was an attempt to reverse the 2016 election.
Democrats still cannot get over the fact that the president won the election and they lost.
But protecting the upcoming 2020 election is the focus of the impeachment, House Democrats said.
We've seen a pattern of this president inviting foreign interference. He was then caught when he tried to get the Ukrainians to interfere on his behalf and corrupt our elections.
Polls show about 48% of the American public supports impeaching the president. A rare event in a politically divided country.
There have only been 2 presidents in American history who were actually impeached. The impeachment is just a charge. The person then also has to be convicted, and no American president has ever been convicted and removed from office. So this is a very unusual and momentous event that's occurring right now.
If the House passes both articles of impeachment before lawmakers' holiday break, the full trial considering Trump's removal from office will begin in the U.S. Senate early next year. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
Still on U.S. politics, U.S. Democratic presidential candidates are vying for the support of a critical group of voters, African Americans. Overall, former Vice President Joe Biden is polling strongly in the black community, but some younger black voters say they are not excited by the Democratic field and are undecided about who to support. VOA's Chris Simpkins reports from a predominantly black university in South Carolina, the 4th state to hold nomination contests that will determine which Democrat faces Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. Emmy Katz narrates our story.
With a show of hands, how many of you all plan to vote in the February Democratic primary?
These young African Americans intend to vote next year, but for now, there's not a lot of excitement.
I feel as though each candidate is just trying to beat the current president. They're not really trying to push off or present anything that's really attention-getting.
I would have to say that I'm not as enthused as I was about the previous election, where, well, I would say the previous 2 elections where Obama was actually in the running for as a presidential candidate.
Former Vice President Joe Biden has around 35% support among South Carolina Democrats, a 20-point advantage over his closest competitor, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Analysts say Biden's connection to Barack Obama, America's first black president, is an asset in a state with a large African American community. But these South Carolina State University students say they have not yet picked a favorite in the Democratic field.
I really haven't been wowed by any candidates. It's a few that I like, or they have some good points, but it's not oh my gosh, I need them right now. So I want to make the best decision.
President Donald Trump is also making a push for the support of African Americans. At a recent White House gathering, young conservatives of color said Trump deserves credit for record low black unemployment and providing more funding for black colleges and universities.
We need to make sure we fight for this man, the one man who is standing up for black America. We are going to fight for, guys. We have to keep it going.
In the Democratic field, African American candidates have struggled. California Senator Kamala Harris dropped out of the race, while New Jersey Senator Cory Booker languishes low in the polls. Political science professor Willie Black says black Democrats have one overriding goal.
African American voters, in total, their overwhelming issue that they all cling to is to find someone that could beat Donald Trump.
But that may not be enough to inspire younger voters, who Black says the candidates have yet to engage.
They're not putting forth plans that will really grab the voters' attention and make a large segment of them, the voters, the African-American electorate, to want to come to them.
While change is a universal demand among Democratic voters, young people tend to be drawn to the candidates with the boldest ideas on health care and economic opportunity.
Healthcare is, of course, a big must-have in my book, as well as student loan forgiveness, because I do want to go to medical school as well.
Biden views South Carolina as a firewall should he falter in Iowa and New Hampshire, states with small black populations. Many young African Americans may be undecided now, but know their votes could be pivotal in the upcoming primary election. For Chris Simpkins in Orangeburg, South Carolina, Amy Katz, VOA News.
In our tech report, a new rehab technology company is helping patients maximize their physical therapy sessions and regain movement after paralysis through gaming. Dean Mitchell explains.
Bernadette Gersh said she'd never been a gamer, but for a year straight, she played every day.
2015, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor called a glioblastoma multiforme grade 4.
Aggressive medication used during a clinical trial paralyzed her left arm and leg. As a nurse, Gersh knew she had to take action quickly in order to get moving again.
Everything was totally limp and flaccid on the left side.
She found NeoFect, a tech company that uses games to retrain the brain through physical therapy. After 6 months of daily play, she regained most of the movement in her arm. NeoFect's CEO Scott Kim leaned on his own experience with rehab as a young child, born with spina bifida.
I had a major surgery on my back, and after the surgery, I had to go through the rehabilitation process. Getting up, lying down, getting back up, and just repeat this.
Kim said repetition is the most important part of physical therapy, but it is also boring, monotonous. To change that, NeoFect developed its flagship product, the Smart Glove. It sits on your hand like a light exoskeleton, filled with sensors to track movement.
It becomes virtual controller. So all the motions that you're making with the glove on are recognized by the software.
Software keeps track of progress and uses artificial intelligence algorithms to encourage patients to try greater challenges as they improve.
Now you can say with the software that, you gained 3 degrees on pronation and 15 degrees in supination.
NeoFect's latest product is called the Neo Mono, meaning new hand. Kim says it will actually flex a patient's fingers in cases with no movement at all, further using tech and video games to help patients through tough recoveries. Dina Mitchell for VOA News, San Francisco, California.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.